G'day YouTube. What I've done is I've cleaned up some of the bandsaw. Okay, I've cleaned up some of the plastic and the little chips and stuff. There is a little bit here still, but that's not as bad as what it was before. Alright. I also have cleaned a little bit of the floor. Well, not much down there, but a little bit. Anyway, so what I've done is I've collected some of the shavings, plastic shavings, and this is the one from the table here. Given the table a bit of a clean. So we've got some sawdust and plastic in here. What we have here is we have plastic and sawdust, little bits of sawdust in this dustpan, and in this dustpan here we have lots of sawdust, plastic, and there's different sizes of sawdust. There's big bits and there's some really tiny particles. Okay, what I thought was it'd be nice if we could try and recycle some of this plastic. The little small plastic, it is called microplastic. Microplastic's anything that's under, I think it's 5 millimeters. It could be 3 millimeters anyhow. Anyway, so these are fine particles. So if we could try and recycle that, that would be good. Okay, in the mix of plastic, in this one anyway, it'd probably be in here as well, but it's probably easy to point out in this one. Okay, we have TVs in here, which is polystyrene. PS. We have HDPE, which would be this bit. There'd be a few more bits in there. And we have polypropylene, which is these bits. And little tiny flakes of everything mixed in. Okay, the idea, what we're going to do is we're going to, well, this one anyway, we're going to do gravity separation to separate the plastic out. Then this one here, I'm not really 100% sure, but what I'm going to try with this one is we're going to put it in a sieve first to get rid of the big bits of wood anyway, and big bits of plastic and things like that. The bigger bits we'll be able to sort out easy. Then once we do that, then we could ideally combine that with that one or whatever. That's the plan. This is some more that I've picked up. I picked this stuff up earlier than this one. And now all I can do is just pour it in here now. When plastic breaks down, it breaks down into the microparticles. And it's yeah, we haven't quite, in the world, we haven't quite figured out what to do with the plastic when it gets down to the fine particles, because it gets into the environment and things like that. The other one I've put aside for the moment. Alright, next step. Okay, what we have here is we have a solution of just plain water. Okay, this was plain tap water. Okay, so what I've done is, I did this a couple of days earlier. Well, I tried it a couple of days earlier. Anyway, what we do is we put some in. Just put handfuls in. Alright, what we should see when we initially do this with plain tap water out of the tap is that the plastic, some plastic will fall to the bottom, and some of the other parts will actually stay at the top. Okay, so after a couple of days of the plastic actually sitting in the solution, what you find is that the heavier plastic will actually fall to the bottom. Well, some will actually fall to the bottom now, but some of the smaller particles, they take a while to settle to the bottom. I think it's because when it's straight plain tap water from the tap, it's got all the chemicals in it, and so it makes the density of the water a little bit heavier. So, and I think a couple of days after it sits there, it seems to the density changes or whatever, I think. Anyway, so as you can see, if I give it a mix, the plastic will actually start to separate. I can give it a real good mix. What we do is we just wait. The heavier plastic will settle at the bottom. The lighter plastic will float to the top. So what you find at the bottom here is you'd find PS plastic, ABS plastic, PVC plastic, and the plastic you'll find at the top here, you'll find that floats will be polypropylene, HDPE, LDPE. So the water is a good separator of those different sorts of plastic. As you can see here, we've got plastic here that hasn't quite separated. So if we left this in the water for a couple of days, it will most likely separate out. The heavier stuff will sink to the bottom, the lighter stuff will be at the top. Okay, this is another container that I did a couple of days ago. Okay, we have the heavier plastic at the bottom. This is just straight tap water. Alright, so we've got the heavier plastic at the bottom, and at the top here we have the lighter plastic. So we can scoop some of that out. Okay, so this is our lighter plastic. Okay, and that's basically what I'm going to do to separate the plastic. Okay, what I could do is we could separate this plastic into two different grades, where they would go to, or three different grades I should say, go polypropylene, LDPE, PE or HDPE. You could separate all those three to those different groups. But what I'm really concerned with at the moment is the bottom layer at the bottom. This is our polystyrene layer. Okay, out of the top floating stuff, I've collected some stuff. I've collected all this plastic out of the floats. So all we need to do with this is we need to dry it out, put it in the oven and remelt it down, and we'll try and make something out of that. You don't really want to see this plastic get into the environment if you can help it. If we had a 3D printer, we could make some filament or something like that and print out an object out of HDPE. So if we had a good way to actually mine this microplastic, we'd be able to use majority of it in, I don't know, just normal everyday items. Well, what I mean is that you could use it for objects around the house. For example, like if the 3D printer community got involved and actually collected these offcuts and things like that, remelted it down, make it into filament, there wouldn't be as much plastic hitting the beaches, floating in the ocean or anything like that, so that no animals could be actually digesting it. So if we can try and reuse as much plastic as possible, then that would be a good thing. Yeah, so all we need to do with this one here is put it in a pan, dry it so we can get the water off first. We could strain it to get the water out, then put it in the oven, then we could melt it down. Then we'll see what we can make with that. Have a test melt, see how easy it is to melt. It shouldn't be too bad. Right, back to separating again. Okay, so what we can do with this one here, we can drop some more in the top. Because the density of water is 1 and the polystyrene is, or PS is actually, I think 1.01, we could actually lighten the actual density of the water by adding some alcohol to it. And that way you'd have a bit more of a separation between the bits that are, as you can see, there are bits here that are just suspended. They don't know whether they want to go down or go up. So that would help. Give this a bit of a stir. What we have an issue with is wood. The wood is probably almost about the same density as what the polystyrene is. Okay, this is as you can see here, this is what I found when I first initially put in the polystyrene mixture, is that it didn't quite separate completely to start off with. If it was a bigger object, that would be quite fine. It would sink to the bottom, not a problem at all. But when it's this really, really fine material, it seems to float more. Maybe because there's more air pockets in the holding onto the plastic. I'm not 100% sure. But after you stir it and give it a couple of days, it will actually separate out. So if we came back in a couple of days' time, majority of this layer here will actually have sunk to the bottom. But on initial putting the material in, what you find is the real heavy stuff falls to the bottom, like metal, dirt, little rocks and things like that. If you're sweeping the floor and picking up all this plastic and debris and stuff like that, all the heavier stuff will sink to the bottom. The lighter stuff will float to the top. But yeah.